Last week, the House Agriculture Committee heard testimony from CFTC Chair Benham and former SEC General Counsel Berkowitz, who served under Chairman Gensler. And it was striking to see how both of those witnesses call for congressional action to address the gap in federal regulation of digital assets. And this mirrored the Financial Stability Oversight Committee's report last October. And this morning, for those of you who are not glued to C-SPAN here at the House, we had Secretary Yellen here for a very interesting morning. And she also suggested that she stood by that FSOC report calling for a comprehensive regulatory framework for digital assets. And she said, and I just would quote it for this hearing, "We'd like to see your regulatory framework over those markets and their gaps in regulations." I would point out specifically stable coins. And I do believe we need a comprehensive federal prudential framework and would be pleased to work with you and the Congress to develop such a framework. So in my view, we have the CFTC thinks that this is the right direction to take because there are gaps in the system, notwithstanding the comments from Mr. Kaplan. And our Treasury Secretary seems to agree, as well. Mr. Garrison, I want to start with you because I think the ranking member brought this subject up. She had a good interchange with Mr. Kaplan about this provisional registration issue. It's very important. This was also discussed in the Ag hearing last week. It's a tricky area to get right, and we want to make sure we draft it in the best way possible. So this is a temporary provision, as I understand it, meant to bring digital asset firms into the remit of the SEC and the CFTC before rules of this comprehensive framework can be stood up. And this was similar to how we approached swap dealers after Dodd-Frank. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
So help us, and we patterned this drafting based on that. The last time the committee worked ably with the Ag Committee was in Dodd-Frank on looking at swap rules. Tough debate. I think Mr. Lucas and Mrs. Waters would agree to that. Why is a process like this needed and how it can be structured to provide actual customer protection in the digital asset markets in the interim before those rules are written? Is that possible we can do that?
It certainly is. So the provisional registration or provisions, I think it's designed to acknowledge the reality that these markets exist now, that these trading platforms exist now, and that customers, consumers are using them. And so until the new rules are written, there are no rules of the road. So by requiring them to raise their hand to signal an indication of seeking full registration when the rules are provided, by committing to certain undertakings of meeting certain standards.
So those standards might include books and record keeping, customer disclosure, segregation of customer funds, right? No one is letting somebody off the hook for those responsibilities, even under provisional rules, isn't that right?
Correct.
Do you have any suggestions on further refining provisional registration that would be best for both the regulators and the market participants?
Sure. So I think there is a provision exempting any actions relating to fraud, and it sounds like there might be some confusion on that point. So I would recommend really drilling down and making sure that during that provisional period, obviously that shouldn't cover any fraudulent acts that would occur during that provisional period. So to the extent there is uncertainty on that seems like a good area to focus on.
Good, thank you. Last week, the Commission issued an enforcement action against Binance for failing to register as a national securities exchange, broker-dealer, or clearinghouse. More concerning was also the allegation that they were commingling customer assets with house assets and misrepresenting the controls to investors. This absolutely cannot be allowed to happen. We need clear rules of the road to prevent that kind of thing or another FTX. You've looked at our draft. Do you think that we have a good bill provisions on prohibiting commingling?
I think it does, both under the SEC side and the CFTC side.
And would it allow conflicts of interest to persist if we had the new framework in place?
It would not.
Mr. Garrison, Mr. Kaplan made a very good comments about his success in becoming registered under the Commission. Are there things that you saw that took place there that we should change in our bill about registering broker-dealers?
No, I believe the special purpose broker-dealer is limited to a certain universe of digital
My
assets.
time's expired.